Good Erev Shabbos, everybody. Welcome back once again to the weekly shir in Pirkei Avos. Rabbi Gershon Afton here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And today we are going to be making the siyum of the third cycle of Limud of Pirkei Avos this year, Tavshin Pei Hey. And this week we are going to be learning the sixth Perek, and we are going to be learning Mishnah Test, the ninth Mishnah of the Perek. Now, I want to say that for those that have been following the Shiurim over the years, a little while back, we did teach this Mishnah, and we went through it quite in depth, but we are going to be learning it again. First of all, learning something again is always a good thing. Secondly, the lesson is very, very important. But more than that, we are going to be focusing on different nuances and different explanations and biurim that we did not put an emphasis last time we learned. There is so much to each Mishnah, and really we can teach this Mishnah multiple times a year because there are so many different nuances to the Mishnah. So today we're going to be focusing on different parts of the Mishnah, things that we did not put such an emphasis last time we learned together this Mishnah, this very, very amazing Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Now, I want to say that at first glance, this Mishnah is one of the easiest Mishnayos in the entire Pirkei Avos. This Mishnah, Mishnah Tes, is a story, a very nice, simple story, which seems to have a very, very simple, applicable lesson. What makes it difficult is if you have a chassid mindset. I want to explain what I mean. When you read the story tells us about the famous tzaddik Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was walking in the way, and he meets somebody, and the person gives him shalom aleichem. He answers back shalom aleichem, which the Mefarshim say that this brings out that there was no personal animosity between these two individuals, because later on, Rabbi Yossi seems to turn down his offer. So we want to start off by saying that the person that invited him had derech eretz, he gave shalom aleichem. Rabbi Yossi responded with aleichem shalom. Everything was very peaceful and nice. And he asks him where he's from, and he says, I'm from a city of Talmidei Chachamim. And he says, can you come to my city and I'll give you a lot of money and I'll support you on the highest way and the best way possible. You'll get all the physical support that you need for you and your family and the moistus that you looking to open in our city. And he seems to say, thank you, but no thank you. Even if you give me all the money in the world, Eini dar ela bimkoim Torah, I will only live in a place of limud HaTorah, kiyum HaMitzvahs, where we have a sviva, an atmosphere of Torah. And this Mishnah is the classic Mishnah, which everybody uses to bring out the importance of living a more difficult life in a frum environment, as opposed to having maybe a better physical life, a nicer home, better paycheck, but in a more secular environment. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was offered all the gold in the world. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was offered all the support in the world, and he turns it down so that he can focus on his own avodas Hashem. That is the simple understanding of the Mishnah. This Mishnah resonates very well with those people that have the approach that the ideal living conditions for a frum person is only in a frum environment, and they should not worry and they should not go out to other communities, even if that means elevating and being mekarev those communities. But this should not sit well with anyone that is exposed to chassidus. We know that there's a famous hayoim yoim. The hayoim yoim says, a chassid macht asviva. A chassid creates an environment. Oibnit, if this chassid's living in a place and he's not creating an environment, he has to make an honest cheshbon hanefesh. What's going on over here? And this should make him feel broken. And he has to ask himself, says the Yoim Yoim, was tue ich auf der Welt? What am I doing in this world? In other words, a chassid understands that life is not about me. Life is about creating an environment for those around me, uplifting all those around me. And think about, on a very simple level, the approach that the Rebbe has instilled in the Hasidim Bechlal and in Klal Yisrael Befrat. When the Rebbe started what was called today outreach, Kiruv, even though the Rebbe did not like to use the word Kiruv because that means that there is a distance. We're not being mekarev anybody. Every Yid is already part of Klal Yisrael. No one's rochik, no one's distant. Everyone has a neshama that has a constant flame of connection. But let's use the word the Kiruv movement. When the Rebbe initiated this campaign, it was very foreign to many people, many in the frum world. But by now, everyone understands the chashivos, the importance and the necessity of Kiruv. And that's why you have thousands of shluchim spread out all cities, corners of the world. And you have many other very, very important and successful Kiruv organizations that they work on college campuses and communities, and they open up Kiruv koilalim all over the world. The idea is that there are hundreds and thousands of people that understand what everyone who learns the Hayom Yom understands. That life is not about myself. A true chassid is thinking of an opportunity to make an influence and a difference by those around them. And therefore, just imagine a younger man in Koilin, and the guy comes over to him and says, I want you to move to my city to be a shliach. Not only will you move, I'll give you all the support you need. I can't imagine anyone wanting to say no, and I can't imagine that they have a reason to say no. A chassid should take the opportunity with two hands and invest in that shlichus. Here we have the story in Pirkei Avos. Pirkei Avos is a sefer for someone that wants to be a chassid. And seemingly the lesson of the story is that a chassid does not go on shlichus. A real chassid stays in his community. A real chassid does not risk his own spiritual development for the betterment of others. How do we reconcile this story in Pirkei Avos, the sefer for those that are aspiring to be a chassid, with what we know to be true, that a chassid machta sviva, a chassid is somebody that cares so deeply about making a difference in somebody else. Now, there are those mefarshim that say, it's brought down in the Pirkei Moshe and others, that this story was not a real story, it didn't really happen, it's a mashal, it was trying to bring out the importance of limud HaTorah. It's not a story that actually took place, not a story that we can take a lesson from in the most literal way. However, most mefarshim say that that's not the case. No, we must take this story literally. And if so, we really, really have to ask ourselves how we, those of us that understand what a chassid is supposed to be doing, those of us that understand that in the world today, you can't live just for yourself and for your immediate family. You have to be, every single person has to be a ish tzibur. Every single person has to feel responsible for the education and the Yiddish involvement of those around them. Everyone has a circle of influence. Whether they are officially rabbis or rebbetzins, it doesn't matter. Every single person has a circle of influence that they must, and they are responsible. Hashem put them in your circle so that you can influence them. And if so, what can we take from this story? How are we supposed to understand this story? This is a very, very, very simple, profound, and important question that we have to ask ourselves, each and every one of us. And there are many approaches to this Mishnah. There are a lot of different mefarshim that analyze this Mishnah on many different levels. We're going to try to stick to one approach. And we're going to try to find some clues in our Mishnah to understand a little bit what was really going on over here. What was the question? What was the answer? Because there is something about this conversation that demands further investigation. You can read the story very shitchiz, very external. And then when you think about it, you take a moment and you reflect on the words you just heard. There should be some questions that should be percolating in your mind. And I'm going to say two of them. There's two clues over here that should really make us think. And that is these two people, they give each other Shalom Aleichem. And instead of the person asking Rabbi Yossi for his name, like most people do when you meet somebody, so what's your name? He asks him, what city are you from? That's the first question you ask somebody before you ask them their name. The first question you ask is, which city do you come from? Is that the first question? But let's say it is. He didn't answer the question. He didn't say, I'm from New York. He didn't say, I'm from Cincinnati. He says, I'm from a Ir Gdoila Shel Chachamim. That wasn't the question. The question is, what city are you from? What's the name of the city that you're from? And he gives him an answer. I'm from a city filled with Chachamim. Is that the name of the city? What was this cryptic conversation, the question, the answer? Seemingly a question that's out of place and an answer that's out of place. We must say that there's something behind this dialogue. There's something behind this conversation that's more than that meets the eye at first glance. There's obviously a much deeper conversation that took place between these two individuals, which we know one of them was Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. Who was the other one? There's a machlokes. Was it a negative force? Was it Eliyahu Hanavi? But it doesn't matter. Even we can take it on its face value that it was a simple, nice Yid. Adam Echad. A nice Yid. What was the conversation? In order to appreciate that, those are the clues that makes us begin to investigate. We have to go back a second, and we have to look deeper at the description that Rabbi Yossi described himself. And he says, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma said, Pam achas hayisi mahalech baderech. One time I was mahalech baderech. Now, I am not a grammar expert, and my native tongue is not Hebrew or Lashon HaKodesh. But even someone of my background, who is not an expert at Diktuk or Lashon HaKodesh, understands that the right wording, seemingly, in this Mishnah, should have been Pam achas hayisi hoylech baderech. One time I was walking on the road, hoylech baderech. What does it mean, hayisi mahalech baderech? I was a mahalech baderech. What does that mean? What does Rabbi Yossi mean when he says that I was a mahalech baderech? There must be a deep part here. Why Rabbi Yossi changes the word hoylech to mahalech. And that, my dear audience, is the key to understanding the entire Mishnah. Understanding that the word hoylech to mahalech is not a technical word. It's not a diktuk word. This is the key. It's the mafteach to open us up to a whole new understanding of the attitude of Rabbi Yossi and what does it mean to be a mahalech. We have a yom yom, a different yom yom. And the yom yom says that Mailes haneshamis al Mailes hamalochim, that the neshamis of Yidden have a unique advantage on the angels. And seemingly, we always want to say that the malachim, those are the perfect beings. They serve Hashem, and they are the ideal oivdei Hashem. We, with our struggles in this physical world, we try to copy a little bit. We try to emulate. We try to go in the path of the Srofim, Oifanim, Chayes HaKodesh, but we don't really have something that they do have. We're not better. But the Chazal, there's a pasuk that says, when describing the journey in Shamayim, the Navi tells us that Re'isi mahalech bin ha'oimdim ha'elem, that I saw a mahalech, a human, a neshama, strolling between those which were standing. And the Mefarshim say that those standing beings were the malachim. On a very simple level, the standing beings, that means that they were stationary, and the neshama was moving. But the Chassidus tells us that's not the case. These words, oimdim and mahalchim, defines the avoida of the neshama, and it defines the avoida of the malach. A malach is an oimed. A malach is somebody that's one-dimensional. It has its avodas Hashem, whether it's ava, yira, it's stuck in its service of the Eibishter. There's no dual services. It can't go out of its nature. It can't go beyond itself. It's programmed a certain way, and that is its thing. And therefore, to a certain extent, even though it's flying high, it's stationary because it's one dimension. A neshama, the Eibishter gave us the capacity to go beyond our nature. The neshama gave us the capacity to do things which go beyond ourselves. And that gives us the ability to be a mahalech. Mahalech means I actually moved. I went beyond myself, mesiras nefesh, doing things that I am not comfortable with. Those are the inyonim that give us the ability to be a mahalech, to get us to go and do things beyond our comfort zone, beyond our nature, beyond our natural talents. There are those which are naturally more chesed, and those which are naturally more gevura. And the Eibishter wants us to go and to show that our service of the Eibishter is not tied to our nature. And that's one of the biyurim that Chazal tell us, that when Avram Avinu was ready to sacrifice Yitzchak Avinu, Hashem says, Ata yedaiti ki yirei elikim ata. Now I know that you fear me. Now, Avram Avinu was 100 years old. I mean, Ati Yadaiti, now you know. He's been serving you with love for 100 years. What happened now? What's the Ato Yadaiti? So the Mefarshim say, the fact that he was ready to shut down his love, his mercy, his natural chesed, and was ready to do an act of gevura for Hashem, which totally went against his natural grain, natural teva. Hashem said, you've shown me, you proved to me that you're not one-dimensional, that you're a true Oived Hashem, you're a true Yidei Shamayim. It's not about your nature, it's about you're ready to go beyond yourself. Ato yodaiti, now I know. And the truth is that this idea of the importance of being a mahalech is brought out in a story with who? Yes, you guessed it. Rabbi Yosi ben Kisma. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah tells us a very, very cryptic story, a very, very interesting story, which at first glance demands tremendous understanding. The Gemara tells us Rabbi Yosi ben Kisma was sick, the end of his life. And Rabbi Hanina ben Tradian comes to visit him. We know that Hanina ben Tradian was the father-in-law of the mayor. He's the one that ends up getting burned with the Sefer Torah by the Romans, the Asor Aruge Malchios. Rabbi Hanina ben Tradian comes to visit Rabbi Yosi ben Kisma, says the Gemara. And Rabbi Yosi ben Kisma has some words of Musar for Rabbi Hanina ben Tradian. He says, I think you have to calm down your public teachings. The Eibishter gave the power now to the Romans. And if you're going to continue your public shiurim, I'm afraid you're going to be burned with the Sefer Torah, which obviously is what happened. And he tells them Hashem will help. Hashem min hashemayim mirachim, Hashem will help. So basically Gizmo says, I'm giving you a svar, you're telling me Hashem will help. What's going on over here? So he tells him, okay, we accept that. We accept that. What am I supposed to do? This is what's going to happen. And each one had their own derech in avodas Hashem. Now comes the question. He turns to him and he says, Ma'ani l'chaye olam haba. Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma asks, Rabbi Chanina ben Tradin, am I going to olam haba? I'm sitting here and, he says, am I going to olam haba? What's going to happen to me? Am I going to olam haba? So he says, I'm not sure. Did you ever have something in your life that would make you worthy of going to olam haba? Did you ever have something in your life that brought you that level? So he said, yeah. What happened? He said, one time I was collecting money for Purim, and I had private money, and it got mixed up in the money of tzedakah. And he said, I'm going to give it all to tzedakah. So he said, Amarlo, he told him, Im Kain, if so, Michalka yechalki megarocha yegaroli. So Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma tells Rabbi Chanina ben Tadian, if you did such a wonderful thing that you were able to keep this money and you gave it all to tzedakah, so then I wish I could be like you. Your chelek should be my chelek. What happened? We're talking about somebody that's Moiser Nefesh to teach Torah B'Rabim. Talking about the greatest tzaddikim, the Loim De Torah. And the only reason they are going to get to Olam Haba is because one time on Purim, they mixed money up and they gave it to tzedakah. That is the reason they're getting Olam Haba. Not for the Limud HaTorah, not for the fact that they're Tanoim, not for the fact that it could be from the Asara Rigi Malchias, not from the fact that they're Moiser Nefesh, not from the fact that they lived their lives ve'emol b'yir of the Eibishter. But the reason why his key to Olam Haba is money that got mixed up on Purim, that's the key to Olam Haba. What's going on over here? The Alter Rebbe asked this question in Torah. And the Alter Rebbe says that it's very, very simple. Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma wanted to know if Rabbi Chanina ben Tradian was a mahalech. Because what brings you to Olam Haba is not being a malach. And it could be somebody loves Torah so much that they're ready to be Moiser Nefesh. And if that's the case, his Mesiras Nefesh is an extension of his Avos HaTorah. And he naturally loves Torah. So to a certain extent, he's a malach. He never left his comfort zone. His comfort zone was Torah and Avos HaTorah. He wanted to know if you reached the level of a mahalech. Did you ever do something which went against your nature? Did you ever do something went against your teva? You ever do something which was not Torah related? In other words, you broke yourself in a way where it wasn't connected with Dafke the Limud HaTorah. And he said, yes, the story of Purim. He says, that shows that your whole avodas Hashem, your Torah, your avodah, it's all Hashem Shemayim. If you could reach the level of Mahalech, that means that it's truly L'Shem Shamayim. Like the Mefarshim say, that is the siman of a kosher animal, that the kosher animal has split hooves. Why does kosher animal have to have split hooves? And the answer is because to be a real Oived Hashem, kosher means you're fitting to be caught up in Avodah Hashem. We're all trying to be the kosher animals. The signs of kashrus are signs that we can work on our Avodah Hashem. You have to do things that you're comfortable with and things that you're not comfortable with. You have to have split hooves. If you only have one hoof, if it's not split, you're stuck in your avodah, you're a malach, you're not a mahalech. With this understanding and the teaching specifically of Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma about the importance of being a mahalech, this is his whole fabrengen, Gemara Avodah Zarah, wanting to know, did he reach the level of mahalech? Now you can understand his words. He says, Pam achas hayisi mahalech baderech. I went out on the road and I reached the level of Mahalech. I was completely ready to serve the Eibishter in any way, my nature and not my nature. He was inspired to be a Mahalech. That's how the Rebbe teaches the words, Ein Adam Nifter Mechaveir El Metoich Dvar Halacha. That when two people leave each other, you should inspire them to be a Mahalech, a Dvar Halacha, make them for a Mahalech. And he says, Ayisi Mahalech Baderech. I reached the level to be a Mahalech. And he walked with that inspiration. When someone is a Mahalech, that shows on them. They are fire. They are passionate. They are Oivdei Hashem. They are real, the real deal. And like the Chazal say, Chacham Niker b'maisav miluchav. When you see a Chacham, you don't have to hear any words of Chachma. The way they walk, the way they go about themselves, that brings out, it's brought out in every detail of their life, the fact that they are a Chacham. Says Reb Yosi ben Kisma, Hayisi Mahalech Baderech. I was in that Mahalech mode. I was ready to conquer the world. I was ready to go out of my comfort zone to help another Yid. I was in the Mahalech mindset. And the person came over to me. Now, this person, when you see such an inspiration, the question is not what your name is. That doesn't matter. This person wanted to know what inspires you. How did you reach the level of Mahalech? What inspired you? And this is what he asked, Me'eza mokim ata. Where are you from? From means, what's the source of your inspiration? How did you reach the level of Mahalech? How did you get there? We're all stuck in our Avodas Hashem. How did you become a Mahalech? Me'eza mokim ata. And his question was double. There's a double question here. And that is that he was wondering if what the inspiration could be replicated or not. Let me explain that to you. There are certain people which are naturally talented, and you can't replicate their talent. There are certain people they never taught before, but they have such presence. They walk into a room and the kids just listen. They get into place, things start moving. They're natural leaders, they're natural talents. It's very, very hard to teach charisma. It's very hard to teach these natural things that exude. And therefore, these people which are naturally gifted in a certain area, it could be music, it could be working, it could be computers, it could, whatever you want, Limud HaTorah, people which are have those natural gifts. When are they going to give a shear? How did you get there? I was born on top of a mountain. This is something that I didn't attain. And therefore, because it was a gift, it can't be replicated somewhere else. And this person wanted to learn the secret of how do I become a Mahalech? How do I reach this level? And he wanted to know, what is the source? Is it something that could be brought to my city or not? In other words, if it's something, you have certain places which are special. Like it says about the spies went to Eretz Yisrael, that Eretz Yisrael is an Eretz shemegadelis boy anokim v'giborim. It's a land that produces strong, big people. In other words, you have certain places that it produces the place, and you can't bring that somewhere else. It has a natural gift. You have certain places which are not a keli to certain inyanim, and therefore stay away. It doesn't work. But then you have certain things that can be replicated. You have a matzah bakery. I don't know why I'm thinking about matzah bakery, but you have a matzah bakery. You see the way it works, and you're like, hey, I'll take all those lessons and the systems that they built here, and I'll bring it over to my city. I'll use the knowledge and the experience and bring that to my city, bring that experience to my company. These are things that can be taught. If it's systems and it's not a natural gift, systems can be brought over. So you want to know, Me'eza mokim ato. What's the source of how you became a Mahalech? Is it something born inside of you? Was a natural gift? And therefore, I can't take that from you, and I can't bring it to myself. I can't bring it to my people, or not. To which he answered, no. It comes from an ear sheyesh by talmidei chachamim shel soifrim. It's not the name of the city that he wanted. He wanted what was the source of the inspiration. He said, this is not a gift. Everyone could be a mahalech if they have the right sviva. If you go to the Fabrengens, if you learn Chavrusas, you learn Berabim, you get into a mode, an atmosphere of building a Yireh Shamayim, that can bring out in people a Mahalich mindset. In other words, it wasn't a natural gift that I got to be a Mahalich. It's a gift that I have and I worked on, and from my Chavedim, and with the right atmosphere that can be brought to you. So he said, if it's transferable, if it's something that can work, if it's something that can be replicated, if it's something that can be transplanted, if it's something that can be copied, if it's something that can be spread out to other cities, please, come to our city. Give us the tools to become a mahalich as well. Because tabreng with us. Make us your kihila. Make us elevate ourselves to the atmosphere that can make us become mahalchim. Because it's not the place, it's the attitude of the people in the place. So bring that attitude to us. Allow us to be successful. To which he answered, so if you give me all the money in the world, Eini dar ela bimkoim Torah. Was that an answer of yes, or that's an answer of no? 99% of the Mefarshim say that the answer was sorry. I know it's good for your city. I could do it. I'm just not ready to leave my city. That is the simple way to understand the Mishnah. However, there are Mefarshim, and it's based on a Pirush, I think, called Lechem Mishnah, and others, Lechem Shamayim, that they say, no. The answer was yes. I'm coming with you. But I'm going to give you the key to success. And this key to success is necessary for every chassid, for every yid and every shliach that wants to be mekadev another yid. You have to know there's one condition to be successful shliach, to be successful kirov person, to be successful in your mission. And that is Eini dar ela bimkoim Torah. And that is that you acknowledge where you're going to live. A person lives in his head. A person doesn't live in a city. A person lives in the reality that he allows his brain to occupy. Whatever occupies your brain, that is where you live. And this is a huge lesson. Because you know what happens? You know, it could happen. Not that happens, but it could happen. You go to a place and you're going to influence a place. But then you start identifying with the city. You forget that you were sent on a mission. You forget where you're from. You forget what your shlichus is. And you become part of the community. The moment that happens, you're not going to be able to influence the community. The moment you forget who you are, the moment you forget where you're from, the moment you forget what your shlichus is, you're not going to be able to make a difference in the people. And that is why, for example, you think about that the Rebbe allowed something called the Kinos HaShluchim. The Kinos HaShluchim is a wonderful thing. The Shluchim get together, was Shabbos a year, And they fabreng and strengthen each other, share ideas and share inspiration. Wonderful thing. But think about what's going on all over the world. All these shuls now don't have rabbis. These communities, thousands of shul, Batei Chabad around the world are rabbiless for a Shabbos. Why would the Rebbe allow that? And the answer is that for the shliach success a whole year, he needs to come back to remind himself who he really is, where he's really from, where does he really live. By reconnecting to his roots, by coming back to the source, 770 to the Rebbe, by reconnecting and establishing my real identity, allows me the koyach to go back the rest of the year to be mechazik my kehillah. Because if I don't go back to remind myself who I am, you forget your mission and then you lose out. There was a very, very famous Yid who was unfortunately stuck for a long time in the gulags in Russia. And he said over the most fascinating story. He said that one day he was in this gulag bunker, and like 2 o'clock in the morning, he wakes up and he sees one of his Goisha roommates stand up, put a blanket over his head, and start doing weird stuff, and then go back to sleep. And this went on. Every time he woke up at that time, he saw this guy doing this interesting ritual. After a while, he stopped him and he said, "What's up? What are you doing? I see you do this all the time. What are you doing?" So he said, he said, "I'll tell you the truth." He says, "I'm a Japanese." It was the World War II. I'm a Japanese general. And I was taken captive and sent to the gulags until the war is over if I survive. He says, "But I've been here and I realized that I've totally lost focus on my real role as being a general in the Imperial Japan's army." So he said, "I came to the conclusion to remember this, I have to every day take time to picture myself in front of the emperor and saluting the emperor. That reminds me, that 2 minutes reminds me of who I am, what's my real mission, and that one day I'll rejoin the army." So every night, 2 in the morning, I close my eyes and I salute the emperor. And that allows me to be the general that I want to be, to remain the general that I want to remain. Which means for us that, of course, Rabbi Yossi said, you have to go on shlichus. A Yid is inviting you, make an atmosphere. But make it clear to the people around you that Eini dar ela bimkoim Torah. Where is my mind? Who am I? I am not a person that's going to become one of you. I will live within you, but remain in the source. Remain in Torah. My mind, Eini dar, is up here in Machshavtei Shel Adam. There, I will always remain the 770 Bocher. I'll always remain the Yeshiva Bocher. I'll always remain the Beis Medrash Bocher. I'm always going to remain the Torah Bocher. I'm always going to remain the pure Chassid. And with that attitude, I will be able to create, recreate, and bring the spirit of Mahalech to your city. That is the real maskana of the Mishnah. In other words, of course, he went. He was Hayisi Mahalech Baderech. He was looking for this. He was looking to make a difference. He was in the Mahalech mode. But he's giving a treasure. He's giving a gift to each and every one of us in Tavshin Pei. Hey, if you want to influence another person, make sure Eini dar ela bimkoim Torah. Make sure that your mind and your heart, vu bistu, you're in the Torah mindset. And this is so negea, it's so important for us in the avodah that each and every one of us have to bring Mashiach. Especially this week is Parsha Shoiftim. And we know that Parsha Shoiftim, Tavshin on Aleph, the Rebbe gave each and every one of us a mission to go out to the world and to tell the world that we were blessed in our generation, that Hashem has given us a Navi, a Nasi, and a Navi. And this Navi is giving us a prophecy that Hinei Zeh Moshiach Ba, The Mashiach is on the way. It's ready to come. It's here. And we have to be able to give that message over. But the problem is, and the Rebbe addressed this problem, that people, ourselves, and people around us are stuck in a golus mindset. The Rebbe called it a golus zustand, a golus mentality. Why? Can't blame us. We were born in golus, parents, grandparents, generations of golus, generational trauma. We're stuck in golus. Now, how do we break out? How do we go beyond? How do we enter the Geula world ourselves so that we can bring other people to the Geula world? And that's what the Rebbe said, if the Derech Yeshara, the straight way to bring Mashiach, is by learning the Torah of Geula Mashiach. You start learning about Mashiach and the Nevi'im and the Psukim and the Midrashim and the Gemaras and the Siches and Amorim. You start getting involved in the Torah world of Mashiach. All of a sudden you start living Mashiach. Because why? Eini dar ela bimkaim Torah. Your brain, you have, in order to be successful as a shliach, you have to live in the Torah world. Your mind has to be filled with Torah. And the Torah of Mashiach changes our mindset, changes our hashkafa. It makes us free. Like it says in our Pirkei. The only way you become free is if you learn Torah. How much more so when you learn the Torah about Mashiach, that we become Peiros Amiti, true free people. And with that freedom, we can bring the message to all those around us. And with that chayis, we'll bring the message to all those around us. And everyone will see that this is a different person. They're going to say, where did you get it from? How are you free? How are you a mahalech? How are you living a life of geula? And you will tell them, you could do it too. It's not natural. Get involved in the Irshad Talmid Chachamim. You learn about Mashiach. You learn the Torah of Mashiach, and we can bring it to you as well. So this is our shlichus, and this is the key to our shlichus. And Mirza Hashem, each and every one of us will continue to be successful in our shlichus, and we should merit